Hi everybody, welcome back. And if you are new, I am Shay and I talk about my journey as a recovered addict just trying to navigate through life. In this video, I'm going to tell you guys my story. Now, if you're someone that can be easily triggered by hearing traumatic events, then I'm going to encourage you to click off from this video. Now, I don't get into very specific details. However, traumatic events do happen in my story and they are going to come up. So I just want to make sure that I address that from the beginning. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Strap in, buckle up, because boy, do I have a story to tell you. Hi everybody, Shay here. So my story. Now, mind you, it may be difficult for me at times to get through this. I don't know. I cried a few times when I wrote it down. I do have my notes as always, so I can try to keep some organization and not say so much. Looking back on my first couple of videos, it's like, oh my gosh. But and I also took off my glasses so you guys can see my eyes more, because there's just too much reflection with my lenses. So until I get better lenses, I will probably try to make videos without my glasses on. So if I do have to stop this or walk away, just excuse me, but I'm going to get my story out, and it's taken me a few days to get all this together, but I'm determined to get my story out, because there's got to be somebody else that can relate. And I've seen a few people that have already related so far, and thank you guys for everybody that has commented. I really love you guys so much. Mwah! Anyway, so my story, I'm going to tell you about the background of who was what and what kind of family I came from. So I did come from a blended family. It was made up of 7 different personalities, including the one that I was developing, My mother and father divorced when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And my mother remarried right away with my stepfather, or my widowed stepfather, who had 2 daughters, and they were both older than me. My father remarried years later to the neighbor gal who lived across the street, and she had a son and a daughter of her own, and they both were older than me as well. I have 2 brothers. One is older and one is younger, and those are my blood relatives, or my blood siblings, excuse me. Now, I think it's important to explain here that I may be off on the exact age or on the dates, especially 22 years of drug abuse. It does do a number on your long-term memory. So, also, what I'm about to explain to you is a version of my history that I choose to believe. I think that's important to point out, because I have heard several versions of what I'm about to tell you. However, I choose to believe this version as it was explained to me by my stepsister, the oldest stepsister that I have on my stepfather's side. She was not only old enough to remember, but her version paints everyone involved in a negative light. So with all of the stories that have been thrown at me over the years from various family members, I choose to believe this one because this one makes the most sense to me, because my oldest stepsister, at the time that she told me this story, had no skin in the game at all. So, I may never know the full truth of my childhood, but this is the version that I choose to believe. So until I was about 2 or 3 years old, my mom and my bio dad were married, living as a family with my 2 brothers and I. I was the middle child, right in the middle. It was about this age when my mother met my stepfather at work, and they started an affair, and my mother left my father for my stepfather. So after about a year, so during that time, it was just my father and my 2 brothers and I. So after about a year of that, my mom came back to pick us up for a weekend visit. And that was the last time that I saw my father until many years later. When my mom left with my stepdad, they started building a house in another state. And apparently they had an understanding where my stepfather wanted my mom, but he didn't really want to raise my children, or raise her kids, excuse me. And my mother had other plans because she wanted to get her kids away from my father, because my father is an alcoholic, was and is still an alcoholic. So when she picked us up for that weekend visit, my dad didn't know he was going to be searching for us for the next few years. And my stepdad didn't know that he would be stuck raising us as a blended family. So that is the context of the childhood in which I was raised in. When I was a kid, I saw my stepdad as this big, scary, mean man. And he never smiled. He never gave us a hug. I mean, he couldn't even be bothered by saying good job every once in a while. He just had a very cold personality. And this man hated me. You know, he hated me as a kid. And unfortunately, that hatred had carried over to my adulthood. And he's the type of man that if you use drugs, you're an addict and he will turn his back on you. He will just as soon spit in your face and slam the door. Honestly. So because my mother was so dependent on my stepfather, she inherited that same philosophy. And she immediately excused this away by saying I needed to hit rock bottom. At 15 years old, because I smoked a cigarette and I drank a beer and I smoked a blunt, I was supposed to hit rock bottom. So they they threw me into the role of, you're a piece of fucking shit because you're an addict. And let me tell you, I owned it. I owned that role. Now, it wasn't until later on in life when my mother did try to help me and go against his wishes did I see how truly evil this man really can be. And I refuse to speak to him still to this day. And I believe that still to this day, he thinks that I am a piece of shit addict, even though I have changed my life circumstances around and maintained it. Anyway, so it was the 7 of us as a family living under one roof, and a great deal of my childhood, from what I can remember, is a lot of standing in the corner for weeks and months at a time. That was their harsher punishments. The lighter side of the punishment was being grounded into your room for just as long. So I was constantly being shut away from everything for transgressions that I still don't understand nor get. So being raised like that left me extremely naive, and going to school wasn't any better because I was the ugly kid who blossomed pretty late in life. So I had my fair share of bullies growing up. So finally coming into my freshman year in high school, I made 2 friends, and one of them was a really good friend of mine. She was my best friend. And I remember when I first started hanging out with these 2 girls, my mother did not approve. My mother was the type that wanted to keep up with the Joneses, and we definitely lived above our means in the suburbs. And the neighborhood kids, they knew it, and they thought that I was trash. And those were the kids that my mom wanted me to hang out with. So she definitely loathed the fact that the 2 friends that I did make came from lower class communities. So by the time I was that age, I finally had made some friends, and the world started to open up to me. So one night when I was 15, I picked up my first beer, my first cigarette, and my first blunt all in the same night. And I remember thinking at first when I started drinking and smoking that nothing was happening, and I really didn't understand what all the fuss was about. And then of course, the effects started to kick in, and after a while, I vividly remember thinking how incredibly amazing I felt. Like I felt like I was on top of the world, you know? And like I was the best version of myself than I had ever been. I don't know any other way to explain it than it was like I was putting away that pathetic loser that I thought I really was, and I had the ability to hide from the world. And I wanted to hide my ugliness, my imperfections, my naivety, my loneliness, my self-doubt, my awkwardness. I wanted to hide how like dorky and nerdy I thought I was. So because I found something that I thought worked, I ran with it. And I was always looking to get messed up. I mean, that started to be my philosophy and how I navigated my way through life, which led me to dangerous situations. One evening after I was attending some school event, I think it was, I don't remember, it was some school event where I was singing. I think, yeah, I was singing on stage. And some friends of friends were driving me home, and the guys that were driving us home, they were in their early 20s easily. And I remember when they were driving us home, I was telling them that I wanted to just like hang out and have some fun before I had to get dropped off at home. Like, I was not ready to go home. I was looking to get fucked up. These two fuckheads took it as an invitation to take me to the park in my neighborhood and have their way with me at the same time. So when I went home that night, my parents didn't have a fucking clue. Excuse my language. I've had some time to deal with it, but it still gets to me. When I came home, they didn't have a clue. They barely even looked at me when I walked in the door. And I remember I ran upstairs and I cried and I cried. I was so confused. Excuse me. Sorry, guys. I needed to stop to vape. I've had, like I said, I've had some time to deal with it, but sometimes it still gets to me, even having to say it out loud. But again, I feel like it's important because I know there's other people that have gone through this, and this is actually just my first one. Many more had happened over my addiction, but this was the one that made the most impact on me, and made a huge impact as to who I was at the time and why I started using drugs. And the reason why is because I didn't understand what was happening to me. I know I was 15, but I blossomed really, really late in life, and I was very naive. I didn't understand the fact of oral, or I didn't understand had no concept of sex at all at that time. So I was very, very confused, and to come home and my parents not look at me at all, not pay attention to me, not realize why I'm in the shower for so long, or not check on me, or why I might be in my room crying. None of that. Nothing. I dealt with it alone. Now, I also want to point out that it did come out later. I think it did come out a few days later because I had told a friend in school, and I really don't even really remember her, but I do remember that she got me in touch with a detective, and the detective took me to the hospital and told my mother. And the detective took me to the hospital. The detective stayed with me at the hospital, and the detective drove me home from the hospital. And my stepfather was very cold, and my mom wasn't very warm about it when I got home. And I think it was about 2 or 3 years later when I got the phone call that nothing could be done about it. So there wasn't enough information or evidence, whatever. So my first experience with rape and me taking it to the police, and nothing happened. But so this led me to spiral even more out of control, of course. So one day, I did finally run away from home, and my parents called the police, and they found me pretty quickly because, again, I was a pretty stupid kid. And they took me to a behavioral health hospital where I stayed for about a week. And when it was time to discharge me, the hospital wouldn't release me to my mother's care or the house because it was just that abusive for me to be there, I guess. But they wouldn't release me to her care, and I wasn't allowed to go back home. So I moved in with my best friend in that lower class community, and my mother was not very happy with that. So I lived with my best friend and her family from the age 16 to 18. And there was 5 of us in a 2-bedroom apartment, and we made it work. But I gave that family hell because the minute I turned 18, I was out on the streets and I was left to fend for myself. And from that moment on, I lived in this permanent survival mode. And everything I did, every decision, every thought I had, every action I made was to put a roof over my head and drugs in my system. So during my 22 years of abusing drugs, my behaviors, ways of thinking, actions were deplorable. And all I had on my mind was just getting my next fix so I can avoid the uncomfortable withdrawal. And so I can avoid who I was and what had happened to me, and what I had become because of everything. So I lied, I cheated, I stole, I begged, I pleaded, I manipulated, I conned, I destroyed, I cried and cried. I begged and pleaded with God. I broke laws by committing crimes. I disrespected myself by selling my body. I abused myself every single time I smoked or snorted or injected a drug into my system. And then I was harmful to others and I walked over them so I can get those fucking drugs. I hurt people and I angered others and I went crazy because I was lost. I lost who I was. I lost that naive little girl who wanted just acceptance and love. And I lost the teenager who was full of promise and hope. I murdered their souls with my addiction. And for 22 years, I stayed running, and I stayed dodging, and I stayed hiding, and I stayed avoiding. I was like a rat running on a wheel. Because I was in this it was like this cycle. I was in a cycle of drug abuse and depression and loneliness. And then the more negative emotions I kept having, the more drugs I would have to use. And then the more drugs I would use, the more negative emotions I kept happening. It was a cycle. My internal dialogue was very, very self-destructive. From the time that I was a little girl, I felt alone and scared and ashamed. My self-esteem was so low. You know, and at first I didn't understand the shame that was so embedded in my own self-dialogue, even before my first drug use. And through my drug use, of course, I hid because I didn't want to feel the shame. I buried myself so much into getting high for so long that I forgot what I originally was running from. And then I just started racking up new deplorable behaviors for me to be more ashamed of and to hide from. And everything I did was excused away so I can avoid my pain and my torment and just get high. Excuse me, I'm going to pause it here for a minute. Thank you. So my addiction got to the point where I had a $250 a day habit, and towards the end, I wasn't able to get high anymore. Shit, I was barely able to keep myself even killed and normal, and without going through withdrawal towards the end. I was doing things to get money that were so disgusting and foul. I had to be high in order to do them. And of course, the cycle began again because in order for me to do those things, I had to get high. So it was a cycle I knew so well and I was comfortable with. But I had tried many times to get off that ride before. Then the day came where I was suicidal. I called my drug dealer and told him to come on down. I had the last $100 bills in my pocket and I was tearing apart the house looking for my roommate's gun. I was ready to shoot myself in the head. I had planned on spending that last $100 and going outside in the yards nobody had to clean up and just shooting up the last bit of blow I had and then blowing my head off. I had thought about it too. I mean, I really thought about it. I planned this for weeks. I knew when I ran out of money, this was what I was going to do. And then I had a friend who was from out of town who was in town visiting. And he reached out to my family, and my mother tried to call me, and she was trying to convince me the family loved me. She was throwing all this positive things at me, and I was just knocking them down left and right. I mean, I literally had no reason to live anymore. Nobody's love or was going to hold me anymore at that point. I was done, finished. I was done using drugs, but I didn't think I was going to be able to change my life. There was no way I was going to be able to pick up my life for the umpteenth time again, after 22 years. And I think I was 37, 36 at the time. What changed for me this time was first having the family, they intervened and they got me to a hospital so I wouldn't be so suicidal. But most importantly, it was my mindset, It was my desire to actually change, and the fact that I was just done being sick and tired. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And sick and tired of being sick and tired, even more. And after I had some time to stabilize and the drugs were able to clean out of my system some, I was able to think for myself versus the drugs doing the thinking for me. And I was truly, truly committed to being done. I was committed to having a new life, and there was nothing, not a zilch, zero, nothing that was going to change my mind from that. That was how done I was. So whether you follow a 12-step program like most traditional recovering addicts do, or if you go another route to get clean like I did, no matter what program or lack of program you follow, as long as what you're doing works and it works in a healthy way and you're not hurting other people, you're winning at life, my friend. You're really winning at life. Let me tell you, having renewed life after going through the hell that is drug addiction, it's like winning the lottery. It really is. October 10th, 2016, if you had told me that day that today I would have a career, a place of my own, a car, bills paid on time, a family that loves and supports me, an actual credit score that I could be proud of, what the fuck? And best of all, I have respect for myself again, And if you had told me that back then, I would have told you that you were on drugs. Honestly, that's what I would have told you at the time. So October 10, 2016 was the last day of my illicit drug use. And during this time in my life, I would have never thought in a million years that I would have been able to achieve what I have been able to achieve so far. I am so honored and blessed to have everything that I have. And I remind myself of that every day. I stay grateful. And the best part about it all, and I'm sorry for crying, but it really gets me, because the best part about all of this is just the beginning. Today I have, 3 years and 9 months and a few days clean. I don't remember the exact date. I have a clean counter on my phone for that. But the best part is that this is just the beginning. And even with this much clean time, I'm still just starting. You know, I'm still just getting started, and there's still so much ahead of me, and there's still so much good things ahead for me in this life. Excuse me, even with the craziness that is 2020. I'm only just beginning. I'm only just getting started. So please, everybody, please like, please subscribe, and don't forget to be the change in the world that you want to see. And until then, I'm out. I'll catch you guys in the next video.